I'm going to unmute all, and then I'm going to unmute you, Daniel. So just give me a sec. Turn number, yes. And then.
Lovely. So obviously there's a pandemic a couple months ago, if anyone noticed. So I'm going to do a kind of a bit of a presentation where it's in the imaginary past of what, you know, the life that once was. It'll give you a background of the project, kind of why it came to be. And then also, I think the main point we'll be getting at is the big pivot that happened once the pandemic started, which I don't have nice slides for. So for that, you'll just have to listen to me talk. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And I think, so just for reference, we're the Neighbourhood Food Hub. We're located at Coxwell and Gerrard. It's in the old Glen Roads United Church. We're a project that's funded by the City of Toronto in partnership with a bajillion people, but mostly Apple Grove Community Complex, which is in the Leslieville community, the City of Toronto and Food Share Toronto. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick screen share right here. Make sure I don't share any of my secrets. Okay. Great. Let me just throw this on to full screen. All right. Can everyone see that? Okay, good. And if you can't hear me for some reason, just type up. If you have a question or a dying concern or whatever I'm saying is horribly wrong, just please.
Daniel, it's a little bit hard to hear, so I don't know if the mic, maybe if you go a little closer to the mic, just breaking up a little.
Okay. All right, how's that, everybody? Is that better?
It's a little bit better. Yeah, people are saying keep talking.
Okay, all right. I will just talk louder, closer to my computer. All right, so great, everyone can kind of hear me? Great, so we're the Neighbourhood Food Hub. I, myself, and my colleague Madeline Chambers, we run Greenbelt Food Strategies. We're a community food planning firm, and we run the Greenbelt Farmers Market Network. That's a network of over 80 to 100 farmers markets across the Greenbelt region. And we support them through resources, research. Right now, it's been a lot of direct help. And we've been managing the Neighbourhood Food Hub project for the past year and a half. So really, the entire project comes from the idea of where did you eat your last meal? And I think most of us, when we think that right now, that question is very obvious. At my home, and I probably made it all myself, including the bread. But before the pandemic, it was based upon really tackling the idea of what is a community's connection to food, both at a personal level, a community level, and of course a global level, which is kind of why we're all here in Construct Planet. So the facts kind of were at the time that you have about a third of meals eaten alone, about 10% of them eaten in a car. And for the most part, people are eating food while watching something, which is kind of not news to anybody. So we really have a strong social reason why people were looking at a real reason, a need in the community to bring people around food on a more regular basis, not just a farmer's market once a week, but as a consistent part of life. The next question people were asking was, do you have a garden if you're a part of the community? Increasingly, the answer to that question is no. We see in Toronto, most of the growth of new residential is in condominiums or apartments. So we're looking at a further kind of disconnection from the average person, from the ability to grow food, eat food that is already grown. And so much of the kind of food-connected environmentalism is predicated on the idea that you have access to green space, which is not true. So then the third question that we were asking before this project was, what do you typically donate to a food bank? I think we all, the answer is pretty standard, which is canned goods, dry goods, pasta sauces. And then you have this system where really you have the most vulnerable people in our community eating the worst food. That is just convenient. So that was a big issue. And the church that we worked with at Glen Roads, that was the main reason why it was So this is a very simple map. This is just food deserts in the GTA. I know this is a climate issue. We're talking about food, but trust me, there's a real connection here. So this is where we have these neighborhoods and areas in GTA. This is when you have a very low access to fresh food. And obviously there are a lot of public health issues there. This is very simply as income. You don't really have to be a urban planner to realize that there might be a connection in these two maps. So we know that it's in the GTA especially, income and your access to healthy food, places to grow, is inexplicably connected. This is was a pitch thing, so who are we? You know who we are. But that's Maddie, so she couldn't be here. Yana knows who she is. We went to high school together. We dated for 6 months in grade 6. We didn't talk for 5 years after that. But so I've been lucky enough to know Maddie my entire life, and then work with her for the past 7 years. We started the Lesterville Farmers Market together, and then we both went into urban planning at the same time. So really what we do in our background, what we brought to these 3 questions, which is our background in planning food systems. That really is just how do our farmers, our economy, our health, and the way we plan and manage our cities connect with each other. So when we were invited, that's the Farmers Market, that's our background, and essentially just throwing large parties around food. But that really evolved into a lot more kind of impactful things. But we're still great at throwing parties, not gonna lie. It's probably still our main skill. We fell in love with working with the young, new, old growers that were taking on farming as a second career. So many times they're born in the city and we see them renting a small plot of land, starting in the market, buying more land, starting a farm, starting a family. So as two environmentalists, it was an amazing way for us to see people building a new economy in this new space that was built upon just a public park. So it was a beautiful thing if you're an urban planner and you're really into how can food impact the environment. So we started doing markets across the city. We were responsible for, luckily, quite a few at this point, from St. Michael's Hospital to Seneca College. And really, we work with municipalities to build local food strategies. This is just nice volunteers. This is good stuff. Fasting forward, this is just some of our work. That was a terrible idea, doing anything outside in winter. Never doing that again. So Honest Eds, we'll read through a giant market in Neighbourhood before they tore it down. Sad. So really, I think, to fast forward a little bit, the question what we were asked by Councillor Paula Fletcher in the City of Toronto was, we have a church, we know what you're up to in terms of planning equitable, sustainable food systems. How do we take advantage of this to fix that problem? It's just more about us. All right, here we go. You may know who this person is. She's a local councillor, Paula Fletcher. If you don't know who she is, you've probably heard her on the street yelling. But I will say, love her or hate her, she's one of the most effective councillors that we have on City Council. Whether you agree with what she's doing, she does get it done. So she approached us about a year and a half ago, essentially saying, can you bring the work that you've done around the city in Leslieville to the Glen Roads United Church? Glen Roads United Church, besides being a great community asset and a great building, has hosted the Glen Roads Food Bank for about 32 years. That food bank provided about 30,000 meals or food allotments to people in the community. And her main priority was, how do I save this building? So she approached us to say, can we build a neighborhood or community food hub that can A, save this building from development, B, save and nurture and support this food bank. So we took that idea and we got a little crazy with it, and we built out a neighborhood food hub plan that we pitched to the City of Toronto. The idea being that we have dozens of United churches across the city that are facing foreclosure because of stricken congregations. And instead of those turning into condos, we said, why don't we build a center in every neighborhood? Just like we have neighborhood planning in Toronto, every neighborhood should have a school, hospital, recreational center. It should have a place where community and local food is a place to live. Very simply, a shed for community gardens to use and maybe store machinery, a depot for farmers markets and local food stores, a kitchen where people can learn how to cook, how to preserve, take some ownership over their food, and more importantly, center the whole thing upon sustainability and resilience. So we're gonna get to the good climate stuff here really soon. Also the scary, depressing stuff.
Yeah. So I think where I left off was, right, so at the Neighborhood Food Hub, Paula Fletcher approached us with an effort to kind of save the church and the food bank. We repackaged this idea into kind of how do we pilot a place where, like I said before, it can be a center for kind of local community food built upon sustainability and resilience. You know, if you forecast anywhere in the future, climate is going to disrupt food systems in a huge way. So on the resilient side, the city knows and we know that to address the shocks that we're going to feel soon, this was I think a year and a half ago, we're going to need a way to promote things like community gardening, even like backyard gardening. It's going to be really important that people can kind of survive in a way that doesn't depend upon like globalized food systems that we know can kind of are not going to be the most predictable. One second, my phone's kind of destroying itself here. Oh wait, there we go. Yeah, so over the past year and a half, we've been in there essentially trying to build a programming space where we can bring in and connect with kind of local community service providers. That's, you know, charities, women's shelters, anyone that's doing local food work in that area, and we built them into a partners table. By that, I mean literally kind of a council. We got together once a month, and through those people, you know, we learn what are the food needs in the community and how can a place like this address them. And a lot of that talk is obviously around. So our plan to Toronto was to bring together all the organizations working on local food around one place, around one table, ask the question, what do you need to enhance your work and stitch it together? The most shocking part was most of the people, you know, whether it's Red Door Women's Shelter and the nearby East End Community Health Center, they'd rarely spoken to each other or had the time to. So the other major problem was the church was a disaster. The main space we had access to was set dressed by a film company in 1982 as a crummy church basement, and then hadn't been changed for 30 years. So that was interesting. So we spent about a year almost, you know, when we had no money to do any of these things. So we spent about a year working with everyone we could. The Film Director Guild of Canada repainted the entire place. We had contractors for free gut an ancient dance floor, and we repainted it and kind of just refurbished on the inside as much as we could, to the point where we could start having community programs in there. Over about 8 months, we had over 250 like activities run. We reached hundreds of people from community gardening, preserving, group meals and community meals. And we really started to build kind of momentum around repurposing this church into a whole new place. To the point where, another thing was we started applying for some kind of visionary grants. Really saying, it may just be a church with people in it right now, but if you add some radical constraints, such as say in 20 years when climate has made food prices rise by 25%, little like side note for history, almost every political revolution has been preceded by a 4% increase in food in 1 year. So you can imagine what would happen in the course of 2 years if food rose 12%, which is predicted to happen. Absolutely. So with that in mind, the city actually decided to go with a 5-year lease on that building and then move in the main partner, Apple Grove Services, and then look for new buildings and new United churches that needed help and do a similar thing. So all that was good to go, and then the freaking pandemic. Pardon my French, but yeah. So the pandemic happened, and this entire thing was based upon people being in like a freaking basement together. Pardon me, I'm my language getting terrible. It was an emotional time. So we had to find a way to totally repivot what this entire project meant in a very short amount of time, because it also happened to be at the very end of our lease. So we would really like to convince the city of Toronto that it was a good idea, and that a pandemic won't kind of blow a 2-year hole in their 5-year plan. So we decided in the court we would turn on a dime and go from a place of people gathering to just a food distributor. We started running emergency food box programs to vulnerable people that couldn't leave their homes. The vast majority of this was all donated. We started finding places that had too much food. We see this massive lopsided distribution where people, and connecting it with the food bank that operates there every Wednesday. It's at the point right now where we're moving about 300 to 600 boxes of food in just 2 days a week for folks that need it in the area. We're building a micro farm, which is just a really fancy way of saying community garden, but it was a great way to get funding. So we're building that down in Jonathan Ashbridge Park to just provide fresh food. We've adopted both local farmers markets, kind of our alma mater, Leslieville and Withrow, as well as perhaps even East Lynn, into the food hub to run pickup and deliveries. So all those farmers will now deliver to the food hub, and those customers that they're used to either pick up from the hub itself, all prepay online, or have it delivered to their doors. So really, we became more active than we ever were. And I think what the city of Toronto really saw and our other stakeholders was that, and you see this in so many different facets, where the pandemic is like a trial run for climate. It may be a completely different catalyst, but it's doing the exact same things, right? You have food scarcity. Never before have people thought about global supply chains. Borders are closed. You have so many of the same radical constraints that we have with climate, but we're getting a little glimpse of what they are right here in 2020. So really shortly after, about a month after this, the city of Toronto is staying on and renewing their lease. They're continuing to fund our work as well. And they've very clearly said, like, it would be really great to have 12 of these operating right now. Food, we've realized when it comes down to it and we see the kind of economic shrinking that we're seeing right now, that's the borderline consumable, right? A climate economy may well be mostly a food economy. If we don't have, that's the consumer good that we can't go back on. We need to have it. And we're looking at global food systems that aren't working, that aren't going to work under a climate neutral future. But we're seeing that intense need for very fast localization, which is kind of what you might have with climate shocks, where you have a summer or two where the bread baskets of the world all of a sudden go dry. And what do you do when you need to have 500, 1,000 Ontario wheat farmers start growing vegetables, or vice versa? So where we're at right now is we're humming along under this new model. It's freaky scary because there's no real plan. And we're bringing a lot of new folks and kind of professionals, experts, volunteers, delivery drivers, that all of a sudden this has new meaning. It's not just about being with your neighbors anymore, which has always been great, but it's attracting technical experts in a whole new way, because it's a logistics operation all of a sudden. Our talent at throwing parties is now useless, so that's just that sucks. But we're getting by, and so I think we're in a state right now. We're making our plan for the next 6 months. We're looking at what will next year bring, and trying to predict as much as anybody else what the COVID or post-COVID future will be. Yeah, and it's been a really positive experience through the pandemic, despite how horrible the circumstances were that got us here. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, people, put your questions in the chat. I'll start off with one. You talked about bringing together partners who hadn't, or different organizations that hadn't worked together before or had time. I know that Second Harvest does work that connects sort of surplus food to social service agencies. And I wonder if that type of role has come in terms of like restaurants in different areas. Do they connect with the food hubs at all?
Yeah, more and more. I think right now, that's definitely like a vector for like surplus food. You see a lot of kind of restaurant or producers or suppliers trying to do like home delivery. Second Harvest we work with all the time. A lot of it seems like replication too, where it's like, well, you know, we're doing similar things as Second Harvest, Urban Harvest, Feed It Forward. But it's a lot of last mile. So, you know, you have these aggregators, they bring all this kind of food together, but really that like last bit of distribution to homes and houses is really hard. And you can't just put it in a FedEx box or mail it. So, and then when it comes to vulnerable communities, which, you know, we saw under the pandemic really expanded the definition of that, as like a good third of people that were just middle class all of a sudden are down to serve and don't have a job and their future's uncertain. So it wasn't just all of a sudden a case of delivering to TCHC buildings. And, you know, not to be, it sounds harsh, but, you know, there was always been a big idea that expectation that certain kinds of people use food banks, and we normalize that in the worst way. So all of a sudden, middle class folks are using food banks and these food programs. And I think that's where the Food Hub came in, where these aggregators could just go to the Food Hub and drop it there, and then we can deliver to hundreds of people. And they would like to see personally more of those that aren't just food banks.
Right. Suzanne, do you want to ask your question? I'm trying to unmute you, but maybe you can unmute yourself.
Me again. Hi Daniel, thanks for coming and sharing what you're doing with your work. It's amazing. I'm here with a few other people, so I'm just the closest one to the computer.
Oh, fun.
So hi. The question from our Minister Wayne is, how permanent is the funding from the city? How much funding is the city offering, and for how long?
With the city, nothing's ever permanent. But I think, you know, the commitment for like 3 to 5 years was pretty big, especially kind of given the grassroots nature of the project. So I think, you know, it's been the most resilient kind of funding stream we've seen, especially given the pandemic and the financial situation that the city's in. So I think, you know, one litmus test was that the program, which is called the Community Service Program, the money came through, was canceled, and this funding was just redirected through a different avenue. So there's a lot of people in the city that believe in the project, have worked on the project on the city side, kind of from the real estate and legal division especially. And I never met Council Paula Fletcher. She's terrifying. So you really just don't want to mess with her or make her mad. So there's been some great champions that have really helped this be more resilient than I ever thought it was going to be. So I thought we were going to be out of there like a year ago, personally. But don't ever tell them that.
Yeah. I have one other question from someone else that I'm here with is, have you been able to move some of the education programs online around nutrition and cooking and preserves and what you were talking about?
We haven't. I think it's a huge avenue we would love to pursue. You know, like adding a virtual version of what we were doing, especially given the fact that there's so many chefs and cooks and producers that aren't at work right now and are looking for ways to connect with people. Yeah, you know, I think it really it's a thing of our capacity, and it's another thing we'd love to get to once our food programs are a bit more stable, or if any amazing people want to help us out with that. But yeah, that's definitely a thing we'd love to do, but haven't yet. It's a big missed opportunity.
Great, thank you. Deb and Dina, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Daniel. I'm a fan. Like, it didn't take long. It took me like 20. It took you 25 minutes, and you had me up to food up. I was just saying. Oh, yay! No, I think food is a big deal, and I was just saying that I've just signed up to do Not Far From the Tree, and I understand that a third of all the pickings go to food banks. And so, yay! I think it's really important, and I think it's very true what you say, that this kind of it can be stereotyped, but needs to be seen in a very different light, given that it's not just poor people. We are, all of us, going to have to be shifting and looking at. And so my question to you is this: is there an ability? I know that social enterprises, the social services, are very involved in social enterprising, so they become less dependent on public funding. And are there any thoughts around doing something like that so that the project sustains itself?
Yeah, definitely. That's actually kind of mostly what I do with our other projects is financial sustainability. You know, I have like a real problem with grant-based projects that are just go from year to year, especially if you make people depend on them. Not that it's anyone's fault, but I think it's really great when it's fed by the community, and we don't have to look at it doesn't have to be profit, it can be revenue. I know that kind of sounds like just like a nomenclature issue, like a wording issue, but so I think one thing we're looking at is when, and I can say this probably safely because I started the Leadville market, most of the people that go there are on the more affluential side. It didn't start that way, it kind of happened that way. And the way we tracked that was the size of people's hats, usually. People were wearing gigantic hats by the end. It was just nuts. And the all white terry cloth stuff to use to give away as well. So, you know, there are fortunate people in the community, and they are looking for ways to help too. So, you know, one thing is how can we run local food programs, which can attract that kind of clientele and redirect that revenue to the food bank.
Nice.
You know, Leadville Market's been so it's been a blessing for everyone that's worked there since we left. It provides really great high-paying jobs to the managers and the staff there. Vendors make good money. It's got to reinvest in the community in its own ways over the past decade. And moving it into the hub is just, it's really close to people that need it. And that's what we're seeing, a ton of synergy. I'm not going to say synergy, it's a terrible word. But the collaborating is great. For example, the micro farm community gardens in the park, that's a partnership between the Leadville Market and the Food Hub. You know, it's a great way to know, not to be weird, but to get, you know, certain funding for food that isn't meant for a food bank to go to a food bank. And that's just us being sneaky.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Ron, would you, or Don, sorry, Don? Hang on. I'm trying.
I got it.
There we go.
It's just an observation that I remember a long time ago now when food banks were first created, that they were created to fill a temporary need. And I'm just saddened to see that they're still here, and that the need to find all different kinds of creative ways to get something as basic as food This is backwards. I think what you're doing is amazing, and it's really important, but it shouldn't even exist. I'm just stating the obvious.
No, I agree. I shouldn't exist. I would like to just, be a white dude and be in finance. But it's like, I completely agree, and I think it's an opportunity to build off the amazing work of mistake bread. That makes any sense at all. So the opportunity to turn food banks from this place of provision to growing it as like the seed of something that's about fine weaving food into all aspects of our lives, which is going to have to be that way. We're going to eat well. I don't want to be eating a nutritional paste in the future because of climate. So yeah, I agree, and I think we're trying to find this as an opportunity to kind of right or wrong, and maybe this all leads to a great thing in the end.
I hope so.
Michael, you're next. Would you like? There we go.
Yeah. Hi, Daniel. Thanks so much for the presentation.
Yeah,
I'm just, I'm sort of glowing because of the expansion of the bike lanes, which we never would have got so fast if we hadn't hit this pandemic. Not that we would wish this pandemic on anyone, but I'm also just wondering if there's also a huge opportunity for, I just know for so many years, there's been such long wait lists for access to community gardens, and they've talked forever about, the hydro corridors, opening up all that land. And it just feels like there's just been a real lack of political will and real priority to really rapidly expand access to community gardens. And I just wonder, is this a time of opportunity to really to push for that, and is as part of the recovery and rebuild process? And I'm just wondering if that's on the agenda or if that's happening.
Absolutely. I think you're so right. You're seeing so many progressive issues fast forward because they are the cheapest, best way to do things. We're already pairing farmers markets across the region through our other work with other United Churches. So we definitely see this as an opportunity to kind of to fast forward. And really, it provides us a rock solid case for why this will save the city a ton of money. All of a sudden, the city's investment, it's the government's first job to feed people. And I think that's becoming all of a sudden clear in a scary way, especially when going to the supermarket becomes scary because of COVID-19. It's one of the places we're all engaging and interacting, and it's become a deeply unpleasant process from the lineup to the whole process in between. So I think the city recognizes that. I think the province recognizes that. The federal government recognizes that victory gardens are going to have to come back, and they're analogous versions in every part of our lives, right? So I think we're looking at it as this a way to build a really solid case for why future funding, especially in what's coming down the pipe, is probably going to be a financially tight environment. Why this addresses a direct need that each city needs to provide their citizens with food, and be a multiplier, right? This has to be a place that makes it easier for people with a garden share their gardens, and also, oddly, because of physical distancing, we really needed a place to go where you can drop a thing, sterilize it, and someone else can come and get it. So it's a way to share things without engaging in a different way. But yeah, so I think we've got to dance lightly because it is a terrible time for so many people, and we want to put this and position this as a way to make life easier for people under the pandemic, and then better when it's over.
Thanks.
And I can talk forever, so cut me off.
Have a glance at the time. We have time. Lowell, you're next.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hi, Daniel. I'm an architect. I don't live in North. I don't live in East York. I live in North York. But I'm sort of new to the group. I'm trying to start this urban agriculture initiative to help homeowners install a rain barrel. And I designed a wooden stand. I'm very proud of. Anyways, and built these
I want to
sub-irrigated.
see that wooden stand though. Sorry, we're probably connect way more than we think.
Okay, then I'm going to email you later. But I just want to bring up that's good to know. Thanks. The idea of you're using our glass towers. That there might be a lot more commercial spaces that are going to be unused. But when you have south-facing windows, you can, and when you have concrete floors and slabs, and that will absorb the thermal mass of the solar rays, and it's a way to extend the growing season. And I just want to share. I've been trying to reach out to my own ethnic community, Chinese community in Toronto, and have not had any success for the last 3-4 years about the cause of growing food. But I did. There was an engineer that in Markham that reached out to me just a week or 2 weeks ago. He's into aquaponics, and he designed this. Anyways, it's called he's using biochar and things like that. But I talked to him, and it's an idea. I just want to bring it up because I keep talking and like nobody is responding. But the idea. So there's these guys out in Peterborough area. They're into natural buildings. So there's a movement now to go back to natural materials such as straw. Hemp, wood, using wood because it sequesters carbon, unlike man-made materials, which spews out, loads of carbon. And then they're also doing ramped earth. So the idea is to, yes. So ramped earth is, it's the greenest as you can go, right? Because having, earthen walls that would, if you have a south-facing a facade. And the thing is, we can build these things at 108 square feet. That's when we don't need a building permit. And if we build a little shed like that in the backyard of these houses with south-facing windows, we can extend the growing season by months. Because the ramped earth will create the interior space warm enough. And also, I just want to share this. Now they are talking about using earth tubes. So the OAA, the Architects Association, although it's geothermal, but now they're not. They're saying because the problem with geothermal using glycol and all that stuff, it's very high tech. Yeah, but I just wanted to say, so you're using earth tubes, which is a low tech, to bring the heat that can be generated by these earthen shed back to the house as a heat exchange. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
I love that shed idea. I might have a place for your shed, actually.
I will email you. Thank you.
Let me email.
Dawn, I think you're next. Although actually, you've already asked a question. Can we have Bruce go first and then I'll come back to you, Bruce?
Just unmuting, there we go. Yeah, Daniel, I'm just wondering if you're connected in any way or with Oasis Food Hub, or if you have any interaction with them. Josephine.
Is it in Parliament?
In the St. Jamestown area.
Oh, St. Jamestown. We actually were supposed to have a meeting right before the pandemic happened. Definitely. So what we know, what we've engaged so far, it's a different model for sure. I think it's a very different environment too. St. Jamestown has, it's one of the strongest communities in the city. So I think, we've definitely seen an intersection there, as well as a need to kind of clarify what food hubs are. There's a million of them, right? Like everyone's a food hub. It means everything and nothing at the same time. So I think, while we're focusing at the time, we were focusing on really community learning classes, certification. They were engaging in kind of backyard food growing, also community programming as well. But our biggest intersection was just not replicating things, right? In this environment, resource sharing is so key, idea sharing, and just being connected, even though there's no real reason to be at the time. But yeah, so I think we definitely see kinship. We definitely see an opportunity in the future. And once I sleep for a full night, give them a call.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks for all your
Thanks.
questions, by the way. I'm so flattered by actual Q&As. I was people just go, what are you talking about?
Don, you're next.
Quick question. Do you know, or does anyone know what's happening with the harvest to the market farms that are kind of around the Holland Marsh, you know, that very, very intense farming area? Is there a problem getting people to harvest this year? And I wonder if there's a way, if local people go up to harvest, if part of that harvest might be redirected. And last part of the question is, one thing I'm aware of is that this is the highly commercial Loblaws kind of food chain.
Mm.
And my understanding is that it is incredibly efficient, that the cost of getting a carrot from, from farm to table is the lowest. And it would be amazing if we could kind of tap into that. So I guess the two sides of it are, are we going to need to supplement the foreign workers who usually come in for this harvest? And secondly, is there a way to redirect even a small percentage of this local harvest to people who can't shop at Loblaws?
Yeah, so I would say kind of two aspects of that: the on the ground and in the kind of 10,000 feet. Yeah, Loblaws is super efficient, and they can get a carrot from one side of the world to the other back again for like very little money. I mean, as we kind of know, all the costs still exist. They don't have to incur them. Everyone else does, and the planet does. So I think, that's the big battle. Local food encompasses the cost of paying people right, farmers especially, and, keeping our soil intact. And then also, meet climate neutrality. That's why it's more expensive. So, well, part of the reason. So, we like to borrow from Loblaw supply chain economics. Aggregation distribution makes a lot of sense. I think we'll never be able to compete with these Loblaws and no frills in terms of price and cost. On the Holland Marsh bit, yeah. So I think one thing we're seeing is not the giant scale producer that we're Loblaws is their main client, because again, you really need to have really high quality, consistent standards to meet what they need. But the medium-sized producer that supplies restaurants and hotels, they all of a sudden, they're industrial in scale. So they do have that efficiency where they have their distribution, they have infrastructure. It isn't that kind of like, hanging out with ducks and dogs and your kids and farming like we see at markets. They all of a sudden need direct customers, and they're looking at their local food, right? Like just because they have a tractor with a GPS doesn't mean they're not local food. And for our climate issues and environmental issues, they still have way less of an impact. So I think, of transferring them to grow and recapture that harvest in a big way is there. We've already seen donations going to food banks instead of being destroyed or being sold at a wholesale cost. So I'd say, yeah, answer your question is definitely yeah. I think the exciting part, which is interesting, I think, to this group, is what we're talking about really is like re-economizing for climate, right? We're going to need to attach new dollar values to food and the supply chain if we're not going to just trash the planet. And once you incorporate the cost of shipping that carrot, not just, running the boat, but what it does to the ocean, or the cost of flying, once you once you embed environmental costs, none of it makes sense. Like not a single thing. And climate food is not about local food all the time either. And this is just a pet peeve, but it is a field for mathematicians. A local apple is only climate neutral, is grown in Ontario until it's been stored for 3 months, right? So it's not cut and dry. We need to build a new system where we realize that a New Zealand apple is better for our planet if you buy it after March than it is if you grow it in Ontario in the fall. So that's just one example of how complex it is. But yeah, and I just want to say one thing I saw in the chat about Chinese Canadian growers can grow anything, anywhere. It's amazing. And there's a massive store of urban agricultural knowledge that there's not a good tap into from a kind of more of a westernized, like not-for-profit community service provider perspective. I can't grow like 300 tomatoes on a concrete lot with like a mesh net and like twisty ties. But my old neighbor did that every year, and it just surprised me so much when she would give me this basket of tomatoes like every fall. Anyway, just a side comment because, yeah.
Great. Nick, did you want to mention your comment? Do you want to unmute? I'm trying to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, our daughter was mentioning this thing called Food Fund. I thought she said fund. I had trouble finding it, but it's Food Fund. It's where farmers have these vegetables that they're growing, and a certain percentage of it won't sell because it looks weird. Not because it's anything wrong with it nutritionally. Carrot looks like it's got 3 carrots coming off of a single top, or they're twisted around in such a way they look like question marks. And
orphan vegetables.
Yeah, so what they do is the farmers will ship directly to anybody who requests them to get it to them, but only within a certain radius of the farm. And that apparently it's Ontario wide. I thought it was only around London because that's where she lives, but no, I looked it up and it's all over the place. So,
yeah, definitely. I think ugly vegetables is a big source of typical food bank food. Things that are slightly past their prime. A lot of carrots just look a bit more run down after like a few days, and they're usually just tossed. So you see a lot of that in food banks. I think repurposing it for sale, and then that revenue going to just to fund programs is a great avenue. But yeah, we're kind of tapped into that, and definitely let's work more in the future. And I think local farmers too have done a lot of great work educating the public. I think the most bizarre thing we've seen is you'll see that kind of ugly carrot, which you see like the 3-headed carrot, that goes to the food bank from Loblaws, but our big hat lady will buy that for like $8 from the farmers market. So there's an interesting dichotomy there around our perspectives on food, for sure.
Yeah, there is also another thing that I was aware of. There was a program on some documentary way back in the early 60s about a fellow who had designed a greenhouse that was a pyramid in shape. And
oh yes, I think I've actually heard about this. Maybe a bunch of them in Ohio.
Yeah, he was apparently able to grow 20 acres of food on an acre because of the efficiency of tearing the vegetables up on racks inside the greenhouse.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool geodesic kind of layouts that you can do too. Yeah. So I think I've seen a few of those too. Saw a great one at Burning Man, actually. A lot of geodesic zones there. But
the Earth, the Earth Ships by Michael Reynolds. You know that garbage warrior architect,
totally.
In New Mexico. He grows south-facing. That's. But
one of those in Brazil too. Yeah.
Sorry.
Earth Ships. There's a ton of them in Brazil. There's a big initiative there to build Earth Ships. in developed communities. Yeah. So definitely, I think there's a lot of cool stuff with micro buildings happening around the city as well.
Well, we've come up to the hour. Is there anything that you would like to say in, to sum it all up, or closing thoughts that you have for us, Daniel?
Sure. I think I would just say, what we've learned over the past year and a half is that all of this was only possible because we had some amazing, skilled people in the community help us. Never discount the power of just a bit of trying hard once a week. Amazing things happen when a few people who had some power, and that just means, to be frank, like skilled, westernized white people, all of a sudden focusing on helping people that don't have much, just got so much done when we relabeled this food bank a neighborhood food hub. And that was really how it began too, was just recreating a vision for a space. So we're so lucky to see that materialize in a beautiful way. I think that's the big lesson that we've learned. And in the pandemic, I think it's a very valuable lesson when we're looking to build new systems together, to be talking to people that are different from us, and communities that live so close to us, but we're actually so far apart from at the same time. So I think, for those folks that are looking to help, you can always email me or head to the website, and just for your own initiative, which is a very admirable, noble and amazing thing that you're doing. I would just, don't discount the power of having a big, bold vision and just shouting about it, because I have no discernible skills. Yana can testify. I'm good at almost nothing but talking. And that's gotten this project a long way. So I'm excited to see the vision of your group, and excited to work with you in the future. And thank you so much for inviting me to come and talk. And your questions were fantastic too. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. On behalf of the group, actually, I need to learn how to, participants. Wait. Participants.
We can do it.
Hang on. Oh.
Thanks, Daniel.
Unmute all. There you go. All right. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you from all of us. And
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, so great.
Let's keep
All right, bye everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
And go out.